the town of Wittenoom in West Australia's north was established in 1937 as a blue asbestos mining town. Now, despite health warnings as early as 1948, Wittenoom continued to operate until 1966, killing thousands of workers and their families and town visitors until the town was eventually closed. But it wasn't cleaned up as it should have. Blue asbestos is particularly dangerous to lungs, to human lungs, causing a irreversible disease called mesothelioma. It's deadly, and that people would be thinking of even visiting Wittenoom just totally, for me, is, mind-numbing. I can't understand why anybody would think about it. To explain what's going on and why this sort of craziness is taking place, I'm joined now by the CEO of the Asbestos Disease Society of Australia, or the ADSA, Melita Markey. Good morning, Melita.
Good morning, Jeff. Thanks for having me on.
That's a pleasure. Now, Melita, to someone like myself, it just seems incredibly crazy that somebody would even contemplate going to Wittenoom. I'm reminded of seeing YouTube footage of Lang Hancock trying to prove to people that blue asbestos was totally harmless by, eating some. This is pretty deadly material. It shouldn't be toyed with, correct?
That's absolutely correct. We just don't have the science to understand why you can go to Wittenoom and get yourself a nice selfie and put it on Instagram and camp there, and your mate with you 30 years later develops deadly mesothelioma cancer.
So
we just don't know why that happens.
And it is as simple as ingesting, breathing in an incredibly small amount of blue asbestos. I mean, this is why we go to so much effort of, bagging old asbestos sheets and making sure they're disposed of extraordinarily carefully. We're not being nannyish here, are we? We're actually, it's like handling something as poisonous as arsenic.
It is very, very toxic. I think the challenge that people struggle to grapple with is its long lead time to develop into a disease. So what you'll find is that workers, say, who worked over a long period of time with asbestos, they develop what we call asbestosis, a lot of them, and that's just scarring and fibrosis of the lungs, but eventually it will kill them because eventually their lungs become so damaged or they develop a lung cancer. But that's exposure over time. But what we don't understand is how the very minute fibre, the fibre that gets into your lungs, we actually don't see. And blue asbestos is very fine, needle-like, and that embeds in the pleura of your lungs and sits there and creating mutations in your lungs. So eventually, over time, in some people, it will develop into mesothelioma cancer. You can exacerbate that by smoking, absolutely. And you can also, as a younger person, as a child, are far more at risk. And this is what's been horrifying. I've seen images of families going to Wittenoom because children are very close to the ground. They respirate faster, the fibres are going in, and their lungs are growing. So we're creating a situation where young people are really at risk, and we have very good evidence around this because of the young children that went to school in Wittenoom and played in sandpits full of asbestos tailings.
So taking your kiddies there to play now in Wittenoom would be akin to going for a family outing to Chernobyl.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a very good description.
So, okay, this is what I don't get, Melita. The history of blue asbestos is so clear to the point where we don't even use it, in so many applications where it was, like brake pads, for example. We worked out that, having brake pads made from blue asbestos with, the possibility of these fragments blowing around wasn't a great idea.
Well,
so why where's the disconnect? Why is this happening? Why are we having to tell people that visiting somewhere that's incredibly deadly is a bad idea? Are people really that challenged?
No, I don't think so. And what happened was a year ago, some images flashed around on social media of people in the old mine throwing lumps of asbestos at each other and blowing around us and having a real hoot of a time. And they went around the world, and I did a number of interviews in the UK, Germany, a range of places. And we took the view that, look, maybe that was just a few guys, and a bit of was put in the media about it. So we then took the view to monitor it. So we set up a study monitoring social media to see actually if people were genuinely attracted, or if that was just a once-off sort of thing. And what we found was no, it was becoming a source of what we would term adventure tourism, where people would be saying Karijini National Park, and some people would be saying, oh, let's go and check out Wittenoom, it's a ghost town, and have a look around, or let's go and camp there. Because one of the things about Wittenoom is it's incredibly beautiful, the surrounding gorges. It's a magnificent country. So there's an attraction because it's, one, very beautiful, and two, it's a ghost town. And so people are not realising how many people have actually passed away from this and how risky it really is. So we took it to be that there hasn't been much in the media from, say, authorities other than signs there, that there's a generation of younger people and younger families that have not grown up with it, or through migration have come to Perth from other countries and not really realised the danger, how it is a very clear and present danger right now. And that's where we decided, look, it's time for us with COVID and so many people travelling close to home, that it was a timely reminder just to say, look, this threat hasn't gone away. It's still as present as ever. And we would like you to be aware and not take your families and not take your children there. And there was one thing, Jeff, that really pushed me over the line to run this campaign, because normally we don't want to create sort of a sense of anxiousness for people, but we thought it was imperative because the New Zealand Herald published an article not long ago, probably about a month ago, warning its citizens when travelling in WA or Australia not to go to Wittenoom. The Daily Mail in the UK have also published similar warnings. Journalists in Germany flew to Perth, met with us 2 years ago, filmed a story on the Wittenoom tragedy, took it back to warn their German tourists not to come here. Similarly, the French. So here we are, have other countries around the world warning their citizens about Wittenoom, and we're not doing it here. So obviously there's a real sense that it is a dangerous place.
Well, yeah, I mean, why? Why are they? Why is the tourism department so concerned about discouraging people from going to Wittenoom? I mean, there's plenty of other tough dude things to do, plenty of experiences to be had in Western Australia, ranging from the easy going, from getting out and doing the wildflowers in the region at the moment, to canyoning in the gorges that carry way less long-term risk and carry some skill application as well. There's plenty of ghost towns to head to in Western Australia. It still remains beyond me why people would even consider going to Wittenoom.
The RAC Travel Magazine published the top 8 ghost towns and put Wittenoom as number 8. So there you actually have an authoritative source putting it in out of ignorance. And so I contacted I contacted the organisation. I dealt with a very young PR person or editor in that industry, not realising what they were doing. As soon as we pointed it out to them, they removed it. But in saying that, they still wouldn't run our ad campaign to say, don't visit Wittenoom. They said they put a comment in their magazine. So when you're dealing with an organisation like that and they're not saying, oh, Melita, great, we'd love to interview you, let's talk about it and make sure our readers don't go there. Unlike yourself, who all the other media have been fantastic, saying, yeah, we've got to get this out. So it was just interesting that an authoritative source like that wouldn't take it. We had to point it out to them.
That is really...
That's why I'm saying I'm not judging people. That's why we really want to take the view. We're not judging anybody that's going there right now or been there, because we truly believe that there hasn't been clear enough messaging for the younger generation.
Well, for me, where some responsibility does very certainly lie, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, Melita. I mean, given that this disease is completely preventable by not being exposed to blue asbestos, Well, the profit that's been gained, the indifference and the complete lack of corporate governance in allowing CSR to close the mine without cleaning up the environment completely, I think can't be ignored. I mean, if we're going to allow people the levity of being ignorant of the situation, of the risks that blue asbestos poses, that's certainly not a position that CSR can take.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because in 1994, there was a Parliamentary Inquiry established into Wittenoom Tourism, and the report tabled 34 recommendations, and one of them was an estimation of cleaning up Wittenoom. And that parliamentary report didn't get anywhere. So...
How do you mean it didn't get anywhere? Do you mean it was just completely ignored? So something that deals with, somebody's made profit off of taking something from the ground, and there's a parliamentary report that I'm guessing wasn't too complimentary of how the site's been left. It's just been overlooked completely.
Yeah, people just absolutely overlooked. What happened was in the late 90s, tourism was, because it's such a beautiful area, 93, I've got figures published in the West Australian that 40,000 people visited the region. So that was in 1 year, 1993. So there was a real impetus to maybe put some resort in the area. We've got rough drawings of plans to put a resort there. So the inquiry is established to say, well, can we feasibly do this? Can we manage it? There are other tailings. How do we go about cleaning it up? And so the report went through all of those. And in the end, I think there was a change of government in 94, and I think it was all put on the back burner. It's just too hard to tackle it. And more recently, we had discussions with the former Treasurer, Ben Wyatt, because he was very keen to get it cleaned up. I mean, he obviously was talking with the Banjima people, the traditional owners. Because remember, it's not just people visiting. There's people that actually are connected to that land, and that's their heritage. In that culture, the land is the people, and so they've been lobbying for years. And so we were making some headway. We had some meetings with them and talking about potentially how it would be cleaned up, and the former Treasurer was very invested in having discussions with companies to come and participate in cleaning it up, but I have no idea where that is at now. And it's something that, with the Wittenoom Closure Bill being presented into Parliament shortly, the Wittenoom Closure Bill is very limited, and this is a disappointment for us. We would have liked to have seen a couple of things. One, clean up, and two, a lasting memorial for people that have lost their lives because of Wittenoom and the surrounding industries that came with it. And we feel the memorial will actually have a two-pronged approach. If we placed it, for example, in Karajini, it's a safe location for people who lived in Wittenoom and lost their loved ones. They can't go there and mourn, but they could go there. But also tourists who might be tempted, because there'll always be those people, no matter, like you say, the anti-maskers, the anti-vaxxers, there'll always be people that want to go against what is out there as a warning. But perhaps if they see a memorial with over 4,000 or 5,000 names and spaces for more names, because Wittenoom still keeps killing.
So, Melita,
I've got people coming into my office now who were children in Wittenoom and are dying from cancers.
So what would it actually cost? I'm sure you've done the sums as ADSA. What would it actually cost, Melita, to actually bite the bullet and clean Wittenoom up?
Look, the challenge is, the arguments are that you can never probably truly clean it up. But what they could do is provide some absolute remediation. So, for example, in the gorges, they're stuffed full of tailings. I don't know if you've ever seen a drone go over them. So maybe we cap them like a tooth, so those fibres can never escape. They're capped, a bit like Chernobyl where they poured all the cement. There's an issue, Fukushima, they covered it all with cement. And then with, in the town, the problem is the town also floods into Joffrey Creek. So when the rainy season comes, a lot of tailings are washed down into there. So there was discussions we had with the Department of Land about putting a brick wall there, or, a cement wall there to stop that flowing. So there's lots of things we could do with remediation, and also taking the top layer of soil off and burying it for prosperity. So there is a whole range of options that can be done. In terms of costing, well, look, figures thrown around to me were in the hundreds of millions. Ironically, the figures in 1993 were around 2 million. So imagine if we'd done the job back then, and it would have been far less because it hadn't had the last 30 years to even spread further. So the arguments are that it can never be truly brought back to where it was, but definitely it could be put into a point where what's there can be stopped spreading. We can remove the top soil and therefore actually really take back some of the current risk now, which is just, it's left to just do its own thing, if you know what I mean, just continue contaminating. So definitely put a lid on it.
So two things we can do. First of all, let's get busy and solve the problem now and put a lid on Wittenoom so that people can be in the area without the risk of being, infected with mesothelioma. And also, they can actually go online and get on board with your petition for permanent memorials in Perth and Pilbara. I believe if they head to the w's.change.org/Wittenoom Memorial or head to asbestosdiseases.org.au and they can get informed. But really, let's just face it, don't go to Wittenoom.
Yeah. Don't go to Wittenoom. Look, and if you've been there, don't feel bad. Don't delete your photos. Keep them safe because God forbid something should happen in the future. You may need them to prove that you were there if you were seeking compensation. So don't get all embarrassed and shy. Just put them away or send them to us, and we've got a register on our website for people who have been exposed. And that doesn't mean just in Wittenoom, but also through your work and other areas. You can come to our website and we keep a record. But yeah, whatever you do, please don't take your children. And please, as just said, there's plenty of other things to go and see. York, beautiful festival, the school holidays, the wildflowers. There's so many wonderful places in WA.
Well, and as West Australians, let's be responsible and clean up our mine sites, eh?
And please sign our petition. Thank you.
Melita Markey, thank you very much for joining us this morning on The Record.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.